Welcome. Today we will talk about pain and the possibility for pain and trauma to be gathered at certain geographical spots or places in society, or in a more close environment such as a building or a room. Awareness of these societal pain spots is crucial when dealing with both physical, mental and social traumas. At the end of the episode, I will provide a simple procedure that will help out in the healing process of these places and provide recovery on both a micro and macro scale. But we will begin with a story leading up to what might be the most powerful pain spot in Sweden. An anonymous place situated in a regular industrial area in the middle of the country. But the story begins much earlier, as this story is entangled with the history of the Swedish Social Insurance Agency, in Swedish Försäkringskassan. The first sickness funds were established in Sweden in the late 18th century. As a member of a sickness fund, often linked to a certain profession, you paid a fee and were then able to receive financial aid if you became ill and unable to work. At the end of the 19th century, the first law on sickness funds was passed, which meant that the state would support the voluntary sickness funds with subsidies and advice. At that time, only 3% of the population was insured by the sickness funds. It was not until the 20th century that the more widespread social insurance were developed. In different stages, more support systems were added. Compensation for workplace injuries, economic support for families with children, or financial safety systems for elderly people, for example. And since 1955, there has been a general health insurance for those who work. In 2005, the National Insurance Agency was merged with the regional funds, thus creating the Swedish Social Insurance Agency, which is now the fourth largest governmental body in the country, just after the police, the armed forces, and the prison and probation service. After the creation of this new super institution, a reorganization of activities and resources took place to centralize certain activities in specific places. There was also an idea to not only have these activities in the few major cities, but to spread them over the country to create equal work opportunities nationwide. This is why some of the activities were placed in the city of Östersund, a city situated near the geographical middle of the country. But not just any branch of the institution were placed here, but maybe the most important one, the core of all information, the Central Archive. Now a constant flow of papers has been sent to Östersund for more than 20 years. Slightly less the last years due to digitalization, but still a heavy flow of physical papers. Here the papers are taken care of, they are scanned and archived. Some simpler paperwork are destroyed after 2 years, but some of the more advanced procedures, primarily connected to health insurance benefits and workplace injuries, they are saved for the eternity. In these documents are the descriptions of many conditions, ranging from simple sicknesses to more severe disease and injuries. Heart conditions, mental diseases, strokes, COVID, depressions and growing cancers. There are also the workplace injuries, limbs lost in machines, hips broken from falls, nerve damages or worn out backs. In these documents, the struggle with the bureaucratic procedures of health benefits and economic compensation can also be seen, as the insurance paperwork can grow extensive and not all cases are approved, constituting a very specific additional pain that have a strong presence in these archives. To simplify it, in this location in the center of Sweden, a large portion of the documented Swedish pain is gathered. There are traces of many kinds of pain, large to small. But the sheer multitude, the vast extent of the archive, makes all the small details of sickness and injury into an overwhelming mass. With this concentration of pain, the location is of course a place filled with complicated and dark energies, thus having a likeness with other places that saw death and suffering. High energy places such as burial sites, hospitals, historic battlegrounds or execution places. And I have visited this site, the Central Archive of the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. Coming up on it, I could feel the tension in the air, that the atmosphere almost became a bit thick. A compression of sorts, the kind of pressure that you feel just before a thunderstorm. It was also surprisingly silent, almost like the natural sounds of the trees and birds had a hard time vibrating through the air. And suddenly I was there, right outside the fence of the building. It didn't look like much, just a regular anonymous industrial building, low and large, gathering some different workplaces inside, a large parking lot and some workers repairing the facade. By just a visual inspection, it could host anything. But I had the knowledge that so many traces of suffering from all over the country are gathered here. Thin, invisible threads that have been spun over decades, creating a web all centered on this place. An energy vortex hiding in plain sight. When I was on site, I was thinking a lot about the people working here, the archivists. That they have a very complicated and hard task in keeping the archive intact, guarding its content and keeping it safe. A pain spot of this size, a trauma vessel of this magnitude, is bound to leak some of its content and affect its surroundings. The workforce here, which is between 50 and 70 people, they are the stewards of pain, the guardians of trauma. But the force is strong, and the guardians will not be able to keep it all in the long run. All the pain, the frustration, discontent and sorrow, it might escape. And when it does, it will be powerful. Now I will pause and quickly talk about smaller pain spots in closer surroundings. It's not only in these large and nationwide scales that pain spots can be found. Traumatic energies from sickness, mental problems and people being unwell can be found in many everyday environments. And if we look towards a workplace environment, there are many specific spots where pain is gathered. It can be, for example, the places where people are withdrawing from a stressful environment, such as restrooms. Or perhaps little nooks and corners of the workplace where you're able to hide from your colleagues. It can also be sofas or other places of rest, where it's possible to lie down due to fatigue or nausea. The places where the stories, the records or the documentation of illness or dissatisfaction are collected. These places, they are also possible pain spots. And they can be, for example, the management offices or the HR department. It can also be places for specific digital storage devices, such as computers or servers. Or analog documentations, such as archives or shelves, where you keep folders and binders with error reports, non-conformity reports, or other forms of documentations of workplace injuries or problems in the work environment. Where the pain spots are located in your workplace depends on the specific activities of your organization. Begin to carefully map out where the problems are gathered in your close environment. Then these spots can be dealt with constructively. But addressing the root of the problem, by, for example, improving the working conditions or the support systems on site, can often be a tough and time-consuming task. And here we might need some additional help in the healing process. A much underused method in professional life is to use healing herbs. And one herb that has a long tradition in both medical and spiritual practices is sage. The both Swedish and Latin name for this herb is salvia, which comes from salvar, that means to heal or to save. It's a herb that's been used historically in many cultures. In ancient Greece, it was a symbol of both mental and physical purification, a tool to cleanse the body and stimulate clear thinking. The ancient Egyptians associated the herb with immortality and protection. They believed that the herb's essence had the power to guard against negative energies and protect from evil spirits. The herb is also used in traditional Chinese herbal medicine. And in indigenous American traditions, sage is a conduit for spiritual connection and purification. If you want to heal your workplace using sage, you first have to locate the pain spots. And then you can introduce the herbs at these specific places. Best is to grow your plants from seeds directly on site, so that the plants are introduced slowly into the environment, and they can adapt their healing qualities to the specific circumstances. Growing sage, it's simple. You can just use standard potting soil, and then you take a couple of seeds, just a few, not too many, and then you put them on the surface. I have 5 seeds here, which is a good amount, and then you just press lightly. Sage is growing in light, so do not cover the seeds. Just water it a bit, and then you can place it in a sunlit window. Often you will need several plants at a specific location. The more, the better. And if you run out of regular pots to plant them in, you can use other containers that you have at the office. Maybe a coffee mug, for example, or a plastic lunchbox. The end result will hopefully be a lush and green environment, fragrant from the herbs, providing both protection and recovery. If the space where the pain is located doesn't have any windows, and it's not really possible to grow any living plants there, it's also possible to use dried herbs. But they are of course not as potent, but they might work temporarily. But now we will turn back and look at the larger picture and the major pain spot of the central archive of the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. How can we use healing herbs at this scale? As you can see on the map here, there are large forested areas surrounding the building. Areas that might be used to install fields for growing herbs. Another option that might work even better is to dig up part of the parking lot, together with the grassed areas on both sides of the railroad tracks and the adjoining roads, thus creating a ring of sage plantations around the building. In summertime, it would create a green and flowery barrier, and in winter, the dried herbs hidden underneath the snow will still create this protective circle. Sage growing on this scale and this close to the central archive would significantly help in limiting the dangerous leakage of painful energies from the site, helping both the people working there and the people in the region and nationwide. The healing qualities of the herb, it's not about abolishing the pain, about forgetting or hiding what people been through. The healing is about channeling the pain. Help the sorrow to become a powerful and positive force, an energy for change.